Welcome to Prolific Figures, presented by the United States Air Force Academy Way of Life Alumni Group. WOL places special emphasis on diversity and ensuring the success of future and current cadets and alumni. On this platform, we will engage with influential Black alumni who will share their perspectives on life before, during, and after USAFA. Join us on a journey of fruitful conversation and the celebration of USAFA's Black prolific figures.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Prolific Figures, where we're engaging in fruitful discussion with influential Black USAFA alumni. My name is Tyler Jackson, and today we have a really special guest for you all, Mr. Ed Hopkins. Now, Ed Hopkins is a 1995 graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. He began his career as a minority admissions officer working in Harmon Hall. Then he spent the next 5 years in various finance and accounting positions, culminating in his role as the Deputy Comptroller for Headquarters 12th Air Force. After separating honorably in 2001, Ed founded and led his first successful company. It was a defense industry company called Criterion LLC. After selling his interest in Criterion, he worked with a private equity firm before he decided to go to law school at the University of Arizona James E. Rogers College of Law, graduating in 2010. Ed is currently a partner at the national law firm Fisher Phillips, where he focuses his practice on privacy and cybersecurity for corporate clients, He and his wife Janet have been married for 23 years. They have a son, a daughter, and a granddaughter. Ed has read more than 2,000 books, and he encourages all younger professionals, mentees, and mentors to read for wisdom. Prolific figure family, welcome, Mr. Ed Hopkins. Ed, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing very, very, very well. Now that I see you, Tyler, man, it's always good to see you, man.
Hey, thanks. Man, I'm excited for this interview. You know, we got a lot of content to go over, so I kind of want to just jump right into it. But before we do that, I'm going to move over to our first segment of our platform, our comfort questions. So these questions serve just to warm you up, and we will jump right into it. So I know the last conversation you, me, and Munzie had, we had an in-depth conversation about music. So I'm going to ask you a music question really quick, okay?
All right.
If you could only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, 3 albums, what 3 albums would you choose and why?
Okay. Purple Rain, John Coltrane's The Love Supreme.
Okay.
And probably Sign of the Times.
Sign of the Times.
So I got 2 Prince records and,
okay.
And a John Coltrane record, if that's all I had.
Okay, awesome. Mine would be a little more new school. Definitely love Prince. I'll probably do Voodoo with D'Angelo. I'll probably do. I'm a J. Cole fan for sure. So Forest Hills Drive, J. Cole, and then I would probably do Music Soul Child's album as well.
That's an excellent one.
Yeah, absolutely.
My runner-ups would probably be Bilal's first album. D'Angelo's his last 2, Voodoo and The Black Messiah. Those would be my runners-up.
Yeah.
But man, when you ask a question like that, man, I got to go right to the most beautiful stuff ever created, and I think my man Prince made those.
Hey, I cannot argue with that at all. All right, we're gonna move into the second question now. Okay. Who is your favorite Black thought leader or influencer?
That's not as easy to answer. Largely because I think we have a lack of thought leadership. We have so many voices out there speaking for so many different reasons. Mm-hmm. However, the one that I think most intelligently captures the types of things that I think matter right now might be Eric Michael Dyson. He might be, especially with the book he just released, which I think is a sermon. It's a sermon in the book form. And that man's command over rhetoric and the English language should astonish those who see and hear what he's doing. His alliterative style when he writes and when he speaks causes some people to, think that maybe he goes over the top.
Right.
But I think that he uses that style to show how dominant of a command over the language he has, and also to use it as a form of art. Like you might see a jazz musician use his tools as art. So Michael Eric Dyson uses words like art. But on top of that, I know he's outread me, and I know he is smarter than I am. So I look to people like that when I want to learn something. Second to him would probably be Greg Carr, who is a professor at Howard University. And Greg Carr might be the most magnanimous professor that I have ever come into contact with.
Wow.
So he often does a show with Karen Hunter that people can catch on YouTube. But Michael Eric Dyson and Greg Carr would be my top two picks for now. Those are the living folks, though. I got a whole slew of folks. If you tell me if we could reach back into the past, I got a whole slew of folks.
Well, give me one if we could reach back to the past. One of them.
James Baldwin. James Baldwin.
I knew you were going there.
Voice.
Yeah, I knew you were going there. So going back to Michael Eric Dyson, are you talking about Tears We Cannot Stop? That book?
Yes.
That book. I tell you what, Tyler Williams, my classmate, he gave me that book. I think our junior year at the academy. I read the whole thing in one night. That is a beautiful piece of work. Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America is the title of the book. I think everybody should go get that book. It's beautifully written. So I would have to agree with you there.
Well, that one too, but he just released another one that I have not yet read. I've only begun to listen to on Audible.
Okay.
So that just came out, I think, this month.
Oh, okay. I got to go do my research. Okay, now going to our signature question, a question that we ask all of our guests here on Prolific Figures, some variation of this question. Now you're a partner at a law firm, right? You're also a brother, a Black man. So what I want to ask you is, what do you love the most about being a Black public figure?
Well, I also practice defamation law. And so I'm always cautious about being labeled a public figure because that changes your defensibility, or changes things in defamation lawsuits. But to the extent that you all are kind enough to actually ask me questions and hear what I have to say, I think the thing I like most about it is that I have an opportunity to ensure that younger professionals that I get a chance to talk with, that they don't make some of what I consider the mistakes I made when I was younger. Not necessarily mistakes that ended me up in a prison or jail or anything like that. I didn't make mistakes like those.
Right.
Mistakes, however, in terms of maximizing my potential. There is something to be said for the value of very good parenting and very good mentoring. I had an outstanding mother who taught me all of the ethical principles I needed to know, but she wasn't a professional who had traversed the types of circles that I have at this point. So she couldn't give me a lot of guidance on what types of things I'd have to do in order to achieve all of my potential. That's something that I try not to allow to happen to folks I mentor. I try to make sure that they understand their context, they understand their talents, and they take full advantage of their opportunities. So being in a position where people actually listen to what I have to say gives me an opportunity to do that. It's fulfilling for me, and I've seen it get amazing results for people I work with.
Man, that is awesome. I want you to hang on to that tidbit about mentorship. We're gonna dive deep into mentorship. Okay, that's awesome. That was beautifully said. Okay, so at this time we're gonna move into our final segment of the introduction, if you will. It's called our focus quote. Okay, now our focus quote actually comes from you today, so I'm gonna read it to you. Just want you to give us your thoughts. All right.
Okay.
So, that which you will tolerate defines your character. I'll read it again. That which you will tolerate defines your character. Mr. Ed C. Hopkins Jr.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite literary forms, second only to the poem, is the aphorism. Some people will call it the epigram.
Okay.
Some people just call it a wise old saying. But they're not wise until others say they're wise. but I write aphorisms, I write epigrams, and that quote you just stated is one of the aphorisms I wrote. What does it mean? It has two meanings. The things that you will allow to happen in your space, in your context, that are under your control, the things you let go, the things you let people say unanswered, the times you sit down when you should stand up, that defines who you are. What you tolerate defines what and who you are. And those people who have what I would consider to be very high levels of integrity tend to tolerate less immoral conduct than those who have much less integrity. So when I see a man close to another man in a position of power, or a woman close to another woman in a position of power, any variation of those, I often look to see what they say when the leader of the organization is clearly doing something that is unethical and immoral. If they're silent, there's a box that gets checked in my mind about that person's character. Because there are times when you know that someone who had a lot of integrity is willing to stand up for some principles and ideas, no matter what the cost. You know that they would not let that stand. They would not tolerate it. So when I see people tolerating things that I would consider to be intolerable, I check a box in my mind, and it helps me understand where I should place them when it comes to my own personal ranking system when it comes to character. But there's also a tolerance part of it where you have to have enough tolerance to be able to be capable of empathizing with other people. You have to be able to tolerate other people's cultures, their differences. You need to be capable of seeing the beauty in how other people live out their lives, their style, their way of doing things. You have to be capable of tolerating that so that you can see the beauty in it. So it's a twofold message that's packed into a few words.
Sounds like some power navigation right there.
Well, power navigation also is, you can definitely use it for that. Here's one of the things that I try to, pass on to people. You get to choose throughout your professional career with whom and for whom you work. You get to choose the institutions who are going to benefit from your talents. You choose that. So you have to be careful about whom you choose to give your talents to, whether it's institutions or people. And when you are trying to decide who gets to have those talents, like the talents you bring to bear whenever you are involved in any organization, Tyler,
yes, sir.
You need to make sure that you are comfortable with the character of the people who lead the institution, and you're comfortable with the character of the institution itself. Because if you're not comfortable with it, if you think they fall below your standards, it's going to be very difficult for you to do everything that you should do in that organization. You'll see yourself having instances where you probably need to stand up and say something, but there'll be something deep down inside of you worrying about whether or not it's okay to do it. Are they going to take something away from me? Is this going to harm me? Is this going to harm people connected to me? Right. If you have to make those types of calculations frequently in the organization or institution you serve, you're probably in the wrong institution, or you probably need to fall on your sword, live in accordance with your principles, and see what happens. But that takes a lot of courage. So I think it's very important to be careful about whom you choose to give your talents to, and that I agree. It could be connected to power because you need to know someone's character before you give them your loyalty.
Yeah, that's real good, Ed. Thank you for that. Just kind of a follow-up question. So do you think the ends justify the means? Like, what if I am in an organization that I don't really agree with the character and the moral compass of, whoever it is, whoever the leader is, but I see the end goal and I sort of have to stand my ground here and survive and learn. Do you think it's worth it in order to get to where I want to get to later?
When I was a younger man, my answer would be to you a quick no. When I was younger. But I hope that I've grown a little wiser. I've been here for 47 years. That's how old I am now. And I've studied philosophy. And there are really three core branches of ethical philosophy. What you just described, a lot of people associate with a philosopher called John Stuart Mill, consequentialism. The ends justifies the means is really the idea that you can take away from his philosophy. But there are other philosophies. Two competitors are the deontology, which is Immanuel Kant's philosophy, which is a duty-based philosophy. And then you have the philosophy that I tend to rely on, which is what you get out of the Greeks, which is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics, I think, gives people the freedom to answer that kind of question without having to have a black and white, very hard line answer like I used to when I was younger. So I do not necessarily believe in all cases, and this is a very lawyerly answer that people hate, that the ends always justify the means. In fact, I think most of the time they don't.
Right.
I think that the way you get there, there's so much built up into that path that you choose to take, how you walk it. There's so much that's built into it that if you are unethical on your way there, you're probably going to have an unethical ending too. So I believe that you need to be ethical while you're going there, and you need to hope to end up with an ethical result. So I think you need to be focusing on both the path and the ending, and that's where I would rely on virtue ethics principles when I make decisions based upon, is this good? Is this going to be good now? Is it going to be good later? And is it going to be good along the way?
Yes, sir. Man, I'm supposed to be the interviewer. I feel like I'm a student right now. Golly,
Well, I don't want to feel like that, man. Let's talk about something.
No, it's good. It's good, man. This is awesome. I think our audience will love this. Okay, so let's rewind quite a bit. Okay. Now I know you, but our audience may not. So could you take some time to just speak about your upbringing, where you're from, and how did you get to where you are now? I mean, take us all the way back to Cali and just give the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, I'll try to do it quickly. I was born in Long Beach, California, raised in Long Beach and Compton, California. I was raised around some tough folks dealing with some tough circumstances, and in some respects, I had to become tough too. I learned things while I was a teenager that sometimes I wish I hadn't learned that young, because I think it colored the way I saw the world. May have colored my disposition towards some things in ways that harmed me more than they helped me. But I saw some dark sides of humanity growing up in my neighborhood. I saw murders. I saw people taking, selling, and using drugs. And all I knew when I was a young man is that I did not want to live in that environment. But I also knew that I wanted to fix it. The despair comes though when you have to confront the fact that you're probably not going to be able to fix it. The problem's bigger than you are, and you just figure out you got to chip away at it. But anyhow, after my junior high years, where I got some attention for my athletic abilities, I was recruited to play football at Long Beach Poly. I went to Long Beach Poly, which turned out being an excellent place to go to high school for me. I was lucky enough to be able to participate in their gifted and talented program, which back then was a pretty innovative type of education. We got a lot of AP classes, and we really got good preparation for college. One of the teams, or one of the schools that recruited me was football was the Air Force Academy. And so I got a chance to sit down with Cal McCombs in my house, Fisher DeBerry in my house. And at that time, those two men coming to my house might have been the most impressive thing that anybody had ever done for me. My family thought so highly of me when those prominent men came to my home to discuss me going to Air Force Academy. I couldn't turn it down, particularly after my grandfather, who was a veteran, told me how proud he was that the Air Force Academy was looking at me. Yeah. So I went to the Air Force Academy largely because of the guarantee, to be honest, the guarantee that I would have a good job, a good career, something that someone coming from my background was essential. I wasn't looking past the Air Force Academy or an Air Force career when I was a young man. I didn't have the capacity to know what the world could offer me beyond that. So I was happy to go. And when I got there, I questioned whether or not I was sane to come to the Air Force Academy, because the first experience I had, like a lot of you, is getting off that bus.
Yeah, we all did.
Oh, and when I got on the bus, I was a tough guy. So I'm a tough guy coming from Denver, driving down to Colorado Springs. My stomach starts getting uneasy, like everyone else's on the ride down, because we're concerned about what's about to happen. Mm. But when we show up under the ramp, and the first cadet gets on that bus, I always joke. I mean, the fabric on that young man's body, he had cut off all the loose fabric. So he comes onto the bus looking like he just came out of the gym and he wanted to do push-ups right now. And everybody's sitting there. We're trying to figure out what's happening. And then at the top of his voice, he's telling us all, get on the front 130 of your seat, chin in, acculturating us.
Oh yeah.
So that experience was a shocking experience for me because I come from an environment where I was the boss, I was the top dog, and to be brought back to the baseline through the academy was something I desperately needed at that age. But it was a discomforting experience, to say the least. My Air Force Academy experience, I loved it. I wish I knew how valuable those days were while I was there. But youth sometimes prevents you from seeing the value of what's in front of you. So I really wish I had done a lot more while at the academy, but I was able to do enough to take away some very good things from the academy, and I love the institution. I proudly call it my alma mater. After that, I went on, I was a military officer, finance and accounting, acquisitions were my career fields. I did well. I ended up at the headquarters 12th Air Force in Tucson, Arizona, where I served a couple of generals, and we did excellent work, both in the United States, but primarily in Central America and South America. We had to lead the transition from the closing down of Panama in 1998 to what are now forward operating locations that serve the mission that Panama or Howard Air Force Base used to serve.
Right.
After that, I started my first company, Criterion. That company did much better than I thought it would. I was able to, what equity folks would say, exit out of my company after a couple of years with handsome profits. And that was the first time I had a big chunk of money. And I was lucky enough to have a very wise wife at the time who prevented me from squandering it all.
Talk about
because I was in a position where I wanted to go buy Corvettes and Escalades and bigger houses, but I had a wise wife that made sure we were good stewards of what we've been blessed with. And after that, I spent a few years doing whatever I wanted to be doing, Tyler. I spent about 3 to 4 years, what I would consider to be in a retired state. I read so many books, and the good stuff. I mean, it's not like romance novels or anything, but great books of the Western world, the Western canon. I got the good stuff in here.
Yes,
the kind of stuff that you get if you can afford to pay for, and you can afford to spend the time on getting an outstanding liberal arts education, something that most people simply cannot afford to do nowadays.
Yeah.
But I got that early in life, and it really turned out to be the biggest gift I could have given to myself, was reading.
Right.
That was the biggest gift, best gift. After a couple of years of doing that, I knew I wanted to get back to doing something productive and meaningful with my life. I studied philosophy by taking dozens of courses at the University of Arizona, not for degrees, but for wisdom, and because I could. Yeah. These were things I'd always been interested in, and I just couldn't. I never had the time until now. And in the early 2000s, that's what I did. Dozens of courses, learned a lot, read hundreds of books, and then over 1,000 books, and now over 2,000. And after that experience, learning the things that I always was curious about, but didn't give myself the permission to spend time learning. I decided I was going to go back to school, and I had to choose between either getting a PhD. I was almost going to get a PhD in philosophy, or a law degree. And I had a conversation with a Black philosophy professor at the University of Arizona, one of the rare ones. And he told me a story. I won't repeat it here, but he told me a story that convinced me that I needed to go to law school, and I didn't need to become a philosophy professor. So I went to law school, planning to learn everything about corporate and business law, because I was going to go back to entrepreneurship right after. But I ended up falling in love, if you can fall in love with legal concepts, with civil litigation, trial advocacy, and some other things, thanks to one of the best professors, the best professor I've ever had, Thomas Malway. After that, I committed to practicing a few years. I knew that if I got upset with the practice, that I might want to leave it and go back to what I was doing before law school. I promised myself that I would spend at least 5 years practicing. Okay. No easy exits. And I ended up enjoying it. There were some rough times in the beginning, even though I started my career as a partner in a small firm. But overall, I found the combination of the intellectual challenge, the high stakes, the competition, this mixture of those things really let me know there was a profession for me. So I've been doing it ever since. And I recently moved into a national law firm after having successfully managed my own law firm for about 8 years.
Yes, sir. Wow, man, you said so much that I want to get into. Let's sort of rewind. As I'm listening to you, and you talked about your experience at the academy, the way you paused and talked about your youth and how your youth sort of limited you in a sense. So I want to ask, if you were back at the academy right now, what's one thing that you would have made sure that you would have taken care of?
Tyler, that question is so good. Man, I wish I could just reach out and give you some dap, man, because that's the question that the old heads like me. I'm in my late 40s, and I consider myself an old head, but I probably should call myself just an older brother, because there's some graduates older than me that I talk to from time to time that are even wiser, and they had much different experience. But for me, we are in a competition at the Air Force Academy.
Talk about it.
It's a competition. A lot of people think the competition is to see who can get the highest PFT score. That's part of it. Some people think the competition is about who can get the highest military performance average, and that's part of it. But the competition that stays with you for a lifetime, the competition that either limits your options or expands them, is the academic competition. And it's unfortunate that that is not something that many cadets are told on day one. So the reason why that competition is so important is because if you excel academically, you will have opportunities that those who abide by the 2.0 and go philosophy simply won't have opportunities to do. All other things remaining equal. So my argument is not that you can't have a wonderful career in the military if you don't have great grades. We all know many examples of people who have had amazing careers and they didn't do very well academically at the academy. But what you will find it difficult to do if you don't do well at the academy is you will find it difficult to have a lot of options. You will find it difficult to be competitive for top graduate programs. You will find it difficult to compete for top jobs in the Air Force where they're going to be looking at your grades, at least for the first 5 to 10 years of your career. You'll find it difficult from having some type of differentiating feature about your performance background where you can show someone and say, hey, look, yes, I graduated from the academy. Yes, I passed all of the physical tests that they made me pass, but I also got an A average cumulative GPA. So that's a differentiator. Please respect the work that I put in to get that grade. So that's something, that's what I would have done. And I know a lot of graduates would say the same thing. I would have made my academic performance my priority. I would not have de-emphasized anything else, maybe except for playing video games and hanging out too many hours on the weekends. But I would have fought very hard to get as many A's as my mind and body were capable of getting at the academy, not just to be the best competitor academically, but to get the most out of the experience and to become the best military officer I could become for the military. I figure they grade you for a reason. Right. And they grade you because they want to figure out how well you have picked up what they were putting down. And they also want to be able to compare you with your peers. That's competition. So I wish I had taken that much more seriously, and I wish I had left it all on the court, as they say, at the academy, which I did not do.
Yes, sir. Man, that 2.0 and go thing, that whole mantra, it's preached to us from day one. and using the other distractions of the academy as the reason why, a 2.0 is good enough. I mean, what would you recommend that we as a collective do to change the mantra from, 2.0 and go to like, I don't know, a 3.0 might be too low or something like that,
Yeah, that's what I want to start. That's what I want the saying to be. Let me tell you why I think the 2.0 and go is so dangerous for us. When African American cadets, and I'm not afraid to talk about race, and I don't beat around the bush on this kind of stuff, and I don't know why people are, to be honest with you. I don't know why we just don't get to it. Do it respectfully, but just get to it. When African Americans show up at the Air Force Academy, what do they see? They see a sea of whiteness. And it's not bad in and of itself, but it's discomforting because it doesn't feel like home. We can, of course, adjust and get to the point where we feel more comfortable. And the best leaders understand the discomfort that we might feel, and they make sure that without coddling us, they make sure that there's nothing unnecessarily discomforting there. But we start off with more discomfort on average than our peers.
Yeah.
And it is easier for us as a result to fall into despair when you are faced with the same challenges that everyone else is facing. Look, I mean, just think about all the stuff you got to do at the academy. You got to be elite academically. You got to be elite athletically, elite militarily. That's hard to do when you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It's especially hard to do when you feel like you might not be in the right place at times.
Wow.
So it is easy for folks who want a reason to believe that it's okay to underperform, that it's okay to settle into mediocrity. It's okay not to do your best, not to fight for the best grades. It's attractive, that 2.0 and go type of culture. Yeah. But it is dangerous because what happens to you is that you are limiting your professional options and you are doing it voluntarily. So what I would do is I'd probably start trying to push a new saying, a new culture. 3.0 might be too low. A 3.0 is too low for where you need to go. But the thing is, I mean, if you think about it, people who want to have options to go to elite graduate program, if you just want to have the option, you are going to have difficulty having that option if you graduate from the academy with under a 3.0. You might one day want to go to Harvard Business School, Wharton Business School, Harvard Law School, Yale Law School. You might want to do that one day. You won't be doing that if you graduate with a 2.0. So I don't know what sane person would take themselves out of a race that they could win if they only ran hard. But some people decide to take themselves out because I think the combination of all the discomforting things they're hit with on top of all the challenging things that all cadets have to do, it makes it so easy for them to embrace that 2.0 and go type of ethos. And we need to work hard to flip it. Yes, I think you, me, everybody who is associated with the academy community, we need to start saying 3.0 is too low.
Yes, sir.
3.0, think about where you need to go. But make people start thinking about the future and the consequences of playing the video games rather than getting the A. The consequences of watching Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, whatever everybody's watching nowadays for hours and hours, rather than fighting for another A. You are losing something valuable when you give up on yourself and you don't compete. So 3.0 is too low.
3.0 is too low. You heard it here first on Prolific Figures. Something else I kind of want to pick your brain on when you were running through your background. You mentioned this relationship between wealth and time. You said at some point in time after you sold your company, you spent X amount of years reading, just learning as much as you can. And then you said something along the lines of some people can afford it, some people can't. Could you sort of speak of that relationship between wealth and time?
Yes. Well, it's easy to understand when you think about it in terms of retirement.
Okay.
A lot of people get up and they pound themselves on the chest when they can retire early. I think it's a bad thing to do, to be honest. I don't think you should retire permanently young. If you were able to figure out how to accumulate enough wealth to retire at a young age, that means you probably know some things that you can teach, and you probably need to be involved in a lot of mentoring at a very minimum. But time is expensive. Time is expensive, and depending upon where your socioeconomic circumstances were when you were born and where they are now, you'll understand that more and more. But what I mean by time being expensive is people who have to go to work 50, 60 hours a week to meet all of their encumbrances of life, to pay off their mortgages, to pay off their cars, to save for their children's education, to make sure they got enough money set aside for long-term care. All of the things that core middle-class American households have to think about. For them, time is expensive. Why? Because every hour that you're not working is an hour you have to think about, well, am I wasting time, wasting money? Because you are in a position where you are constantly thinking about, how am I going to get more money to set up all of these things that I need in my life, such as retirement. So when you are always in a situation where you are worried about making sure that you get enough money for all of the basics, because you didn't inherit wealth or you didn't get rich quick, your relationship with time is different. To you, time is money. But if you have money, what does time become? Time becomes a way for you to pursue what really makes you happy. It gives you opportunity to pursue wisdom. Gives you an opportunity to contribute to the community in ways that people who are time impoverished cannot contribute. It enables you to sit back and take it in, to see what's going on in the world, to read these books, to try to figure out what the smartest, wisest people have thought and what they wrote down. That's what time gives you an opportunity to do. But people who have spent their entire lives working very hard, living to work rather than working to live, they lose sight of the value of time, and they end up not figuring out how to use it until they get to retirement. And that's too late.
Yeah.
I think people need to figure out how valuable an hour or two to yourself to read a book, how valuable that is and how much that can improve your life. They need to grasp that at a young age, because I can tell you now, even if I'm able to live a very long life, and maybe in my 70s, 80s, and God willing, my 90s, I have all the time and still have good eyes to read, I will read a lot more books. But I can't tell you how happy I am that I read a few thousand before 48.
Yes, sir.
Because it really did improve my quality of life, made me see things that I am confident I would have been blind to had I not read those books.
Yes, sir.
And time gave that to me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So the last thing I want to get into regarding your background, sort of fast forwards to now, present time, right? You're a partner at Fisher Phillips. Before that, you had a lot of success running your own firm, Hopkins Way. So what made you want to pivot and join the ranks of a law firm like Fisher Phillips?
Okay. That's a very good question. I hope a couple of lawyers get a chance to see this answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an African-American attorney. I was a successful African-American attorney before I joined Fisher Phillips. There aren't many of us. There aren't many of us in Colorado. So I want that to change. I want there to be many more successful African-American attorneys at every level of the legal profession. I want to see more African-American judges on the federal and state courts. I want to see more African-American partners at the leadership levels of law firms. I want to see more African-Americans in administration positions for judicial systems. And someone has to be in those institutions that those type of people emerge from. Someone has to be in them, doing the work of ensuring the institutions are giving fair opportunities to diverse new lawyers, giving them opportunities to become partners. Someone also needs to be there so that young lawyers can see that they too can do it. So I think in June, when we had the town hall, I mentioned how important it was that the Academy and other very important institutions have African Americans and other diverse leaders in their institutions.
Yes.
And I was very happy to see General Clark show up at the Academy, very happy to see Colonel Jones, shout out to Otis Jones, class of 1995, very happy to see them in leadership positions this year. But the comment I made then, and I'll repeat here, is that you can't take for granted how important that is to a young man and a young woman to see someone who looks like them leading the institution. So for me, one of the biggest factors was the opportunity to be a face that others would consider to be a face of leadership, which is what oftentimes people associate with partners, and to be in the middle of the institution and other institutions connected to it in a way where I could help and mentor other African-American attorneys and do more to diversify the legal profession. That was probably the biggest reason.
Yes, sir.
Second to that, as a solo practitioner or small firm owner, I was a small firm owner, there were other attorneys working with me. Your ability to wield and accumulate power as an attorney is limited. The reason why is because oftentimes attorneys who wield influence and power, they're connected with more powerful institutions like big law firms.
Yes, sir.
And I recognize, as I was mentoring, and I mentor quite a few young professionals, I realized that there was more that I could do for them if I had more power. And power means the ability to call people who influence institutions in a way that normal folks can't, just to get on the phone with them, make recommendations, have your letters of recommendations carry great weight for folks you're trying to help. And I needed to accumulate more of that in order to be the best possible sponsor and mentor I could be for the young men and women I'm trying to help make it through life. But finally, I think it had a lot to do with the prestige factor as well. I'm not a very different lawyer than I was 6 months ago when I joined a big law firm, but I'm treated very differently because of the law firm's prestige.
Yes, sir.
So because of the law firm's credibility, reputation, there are corporate clients, for instance, who will give me opportunities to do things that they might not have given me opportunities to do, even though I'm the same lawyer, Tyre,
Yes, sir.
same guy,
Yeah.
Same skill set, because of the institution. Yeah. And I wanted to have opportunities to do much more complicated data privacy and cybersecurity legal work than I was able to do with the firm that I own prior to joining this one. So those are the reasons.
Yes, sir. Matt, we're going to put a pin on that prestige and the power portion. We're going to come back to that. I finally want to touch on mentorship. Every question that I've asked you thus far in this interview, you somehow go back to mentorship. Now, what a lot of people don't know is you actually spend countless hours a week mentoring young people in the military and outside the military. One could argue that the time that you spend mentoring, if you invested that time back into yourself, you would add a few more million to your net worth. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. So my question to you, why? Why do you spend so much time mentoring people like us when you could be skyrocketing your own wealth, your own portfolio?
I'm a patriot.
Wow.
I'm a member of the long blue line. And I take my duties very seriously. As I grow older, I take them more seriously. I think that part of the responsibility of being blessed, whether it's being blessed financially, being blessed with power, being blessed with prestige, when you are blessed, you owe something to the society that blessed you. I owe something to the United States. I owe something to the Air Force Academy, and I for damn sure owe something to African Americans because I am confident that there is nothing substantial in my life that I've achieved that I would not have achieved but for, that I would have achieved but if I didn't have the support of African American communities. So there's no way I could in good conscience not give back. Now, there are ways to give back. To me, I have, because of the way I arrived at this point, I have picked up some skills, experiences, and because of all my reading, there's some valuable things that I have that I can pass on to folks who are competing for wealth, power, and prestige. And I want to do more to make sure that I am giving them their best opportunity to reach their full potential. So for me, part of being a patriot is figuring out how you can best serve your country, how I best serve my country is mentoring young African-American men and women. I do that well. And if I have opportunities to start with them when they are young, 18, 19, I do have the ability to improve their ability to reach their full potential. And I could give you at least a dozen examples of where I have done that. To me, that's more valuable than writing the checks, which I also do, because it requires me to give you and others like you the most important thing to me, which is my time. So if I'm talking to you like we are right now, and we're on the phone, that's one indication that I think that your life is very valuable, very important for our country, because we're talking, and my whole goal is to make sure we get the best out of you. So in order to do that, I need to make sure that I help you avoid pitfalls, internal and external. And I need to make sure I teach you as much about the game as I can, so that you don't go into these competitions blind, and you have all of the tools and the wisdom that your top competitors have when they meet you at these competitions. That's why I do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, that was beautiful. I sort of want to touch on one thing too regarding the Air Force, right? The last tidbit you mentioned is teach you the rules of the game. When you think of mentorship in the Air Force, the active duty Air Force, what would you personally like to see more of as it relates to the game that is being played?
I think the single most valuable thing that we can do for our diverse officers would be to connect them with Lieutenant Colonel plus mentors, probably by the time they're juniors at the academy. And I think that they should be connected to Lieutenant Colonel plus mentors who are not African Americans if they're African American. Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why.
Please dig that up for me.
So here's the thing. You better hunt down a mentor or a sponsor that's African American if you're an African American cadet. Okay. If you are graduating from the Air Force Academy, you don't already have at least 2 mentors who are graduates or active duty officers, you are not fulfilling. You need to check that box. You need to build relationships, and it's easy. It should be easy for you to find African American officers, at least 2, who will give you guidance. That part, you don't need a system. You don't need a formal program, I think, to necessarily do. You just need to have the cadet understand that they need to reach out and they need to make it happen. They don't need to wait on a mentor to come knocking on the door and say, hey, I'd like to be your mentor. No, you go find them and you court them. So you find and court at least 1 or 2, and it's easy to do for most cadets. What's not easy to do is build relationships with white Air Force officers who have 15 to 20 years of experience in the military, who can teach you about the game from their perspective. And you will have a much more competitive career if you get the perspective of both the white and the Black officers in the military. And I'm oversimplifying it, right? I'm saying black and white, but I'm just really saying someone different from where you're coming from. And I think that the more we could pair Lieutenant Colonel plus military officers with African-American cadets, the better those African-American cadets will understand the true nature of the competition they're entering in when they get into the Air Force. Now, everybody's expected to do the best job that they can. Everybody's expected to be honorable, have integrity. But you have to sit back and wonder, how do folks who apparently start off at the same place when they graduate, how do some become 2- and 3-star generals, where others end their careers at lieutenant colonels? What is happening between graduating from the academy and being a lieutenant colonel after 20 years versus being a colonel after 20 years?
Yeah.
Being a brigadier general. So there are things that occur. You have to pick up sponsors along the way. You have to have certain kinds of jobs and a certain kind of sequence. You have to be or become a certain kind of figure within the institution to give yourself the best possible opportunity to rise up the ranks. But you also need to perform at an elite level. But most importantly, you got to get to know the right folks, and they got to get to know you.
Yes, sir.
They got to be willing to bet on you, to invest their reputations in you, and to sponsor you.
Yes, sir.
Now, the most successful white officers will be able to teach young cadets about those rules of the game, and in a way that that would make them richer, better competitors when they get onto the Air Force. So I think that that would be a big improvement in terms of the mentorship opportunities we have. But that's just my off the wall idea.
Off the wall, and I think that's a very on point idea. This is a really rich conversation, man. I'm excited. So I kind of want to pivot to wealth, power, and prestige now. Now this next question, it may go over some of our listeners' heads, but I want to ask this question just to put it out there, and hopefully people will go do their own research and listen to what Ed has to say here. So wealth, power, and prestige. What do you want people under the sound of your voice now to know about these three pillars of trade in our country? Are they actually pillars of trade? Just sort of give us your thoughts on that.
Okay. So about 2 decades ago, I first read a book by he used to be a professor of sociology at Columbia University. His name was C. Wright Mills. Okay. He wrote a book back then that was kind of controversial called The Power Elite.
Okay.
In that book, he laid out an argument that there are really 3 forms of really compensation. There's 3 things that a society like ours offers to people who are competing for stuff. They offer wealth, they offer power, and they offer prestige. Everybody knows the benefits of wealth. Wealth enables you to buy all the stuff that the materialistic side of you wants. Buy all the stuff that you can wear or drive around town, so that people will turn their heads and say, "Ooh, ah." Have the magnificent things that make you proud of what you've achieved. If that's what you need to be happy, you know that wealth buys that. So wealth is something that's easy to grasp. What's more difficult to grasp is what happens to you when you have large sums of it. What I mean by large sums is I mean like when you are a decamillionaire, or when you have so much money that writing the maximum amount of checks that you can for every political campaign that you want to support every year is nothing to you. When you can write $10,000, $20,000 checks to the most important nonprofits in your community, it's not going to break the bank. Not a lot of people get that kind of wealth, but when you do have it, you can do things within your community, to your family, for your nation in some respects, that people who lack it simply cannot do. But you have to decide whether you're going to compete for it, unless you inherit it. So you have to have an understanding of what it does in society. Wealth has a lot of ways has a lot of uses. But something that people don't talk enough about is power. So you might often ask yourselves, why are people who could make a lot more money, why are they doing things such as being senators, or why are they being or congressional representatives? Why are they doing that rather than out there making millions of dollars as lawyers or executives? Why? Well, because they value power, and they value the ability to control or influence institutions at a level where they can move those institutions' assets in ways that normal people can't. So it's not the wealth of them that they get to use, it's the wealth of the institution. And that's what power is. Power enables you to wield the institution's wealth in a way that is either unilateral or that requires fewer people to check with than people who don't have that power. So a lot of people will like to use the power to change the society the way they want. And then you have prestige. In the military, everybody is familiar with prestige. You know how it feels to see a 3-star general walk down the hall. Why do you feel that way? Yeah. That person puts their pants on like you put yours on, but they have 3 stars on their shoulders. And in your community, in your environment, military environment, you associate prestige with that and you value it. Some people desire it. And when you find people who desire it enough, you might even be able to compensate them with it. So you might, instead of paying someone $1 million to do a job, you might give them a prestigious reward or prestigious title, and they'll take less money. But the reason why I bring all this up is because you really can't find anything other than wealth, power, and prestige that we give out as a society to people who do what we'd like them to do. So when you're thinking about it in those terms, the reason why I think it's important to understand how wealth, power, and prestige work is because when you're making big decisions about whether you're going to take a job, what kind of career path you're going to take, you need to understand for yourself how much prestige matters to you. Are you willing to take rank instead of money? Are you willing to take power instead of wealth? What kind of person are you? The sooner you figure that out, the better off I think you'll be in terms of understanding how you want to be compensated for your talents as you move along in life as a professional. But more importantly, you need to understand how people use wealth, power, and prestige against you. Mm. So those who have lots of it, they are making the world different the way they want it to be different. Those who have the least of it, they have to watch. They have to watch why the most powerful, the wealthiest, most prestigious people do things to their society that they really don't have much influence to counter. Yeah. So if you're one of those types of folks who recognizes that we live in a competitive society, wealth, power, prestige is what we give out as the rewards. And the people who win the most awards get to change society more than people who win the least awards. You have to decide, do you want to be in a position where you're winning the fewest amounts of wealth, power, and prestige? Or do you want to be in a position where you're winning the most? And if you're going to be in a position where you're winning the most, you want to figure out sooner rather than later what you're going to do with it when you get it. So that's one of the starting conversations I have with people I mentor, because when we talk about, and I'm going to do it after we're done, I got a couple of hours of calls today. Sorry. They say, Ed, I'm thinking about applying to Harvard Business School, or I'm thinking about taking this job with this Fortune 100 company. And I say, okay, let's do the drill. Yep. Wealth, power, and prestige. Let's look at what each of these paths are going to give you or take away from you on those three fronts. And by the time we're done with that conversation, oftentimes people have a clearer understanding of how they value those paths. Not how I value it, yep, but how they value it, based upon how much they value wealth, power, and prestige.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So of those three, which one would you say is the most important? And also, do you think people have the choice? Like, do you think it's actually a choice to compete? Or do you think if you choose not to compete, you're actually choosing to lose?
No, you don't have a choice. We're all competing. We're all competing. No one is not seeking more wealth. So everybody is in this competition. Some people will convince themselves that it's not important. They tend to be the folks who either don't want that smoke, right? They don't want to have to go up against the folks who've been staying at home instead of partying for decades in a row, just so that they can beat you on one test. Yeah. Or so they can beat you for a competition to see who's going to become a Fortune 50's vice president first. So some people just don't want that smoke, but we all are in the competition. You cannot get out of it. If you want to build a life for your family, if you want to have things for yourself, if you want a home and it wasn't given to you, you are in a competition, and it's over wealth, power, and prestige. You can tell yourself that you don't need a lot of it. That's okay. But think about the version of you that had a lot of it, what that version would do. And then you decide whether or not you want that version to come into being, or if you want to let it go. But the thing that people need to understand is that whether you're in the competition is not your choice. How you compete is. Okay. And that is something everybody needs to understand sooner rather than later, because the later you figure that out, the more you'll regret all the opportunities you wasted when you were young.
Wow. Thank you for that. So of those three, you would say wealth is the most important, or will you rank them all equally?
Before I watch what is happening to our country, and I'm not afraid to talk politics either, but I'm not going to go into a depth. I'm not going to disparage anybody either. I'm just going to tell you how I see it. Before I observed our current president's use of power, I would have probably told you that wealth was the most important. But I have observed over the last couple of years, one individual who to me has been a genius at marketing, a genius at making the masses follow his lead. That's one thing you cannot take away from him, is that he's better at marketing. He's better at moving the crowd than maybe anybody we've seen, not because he speaks better than maybe the most gifted rhetorically president we've had in a long time, Obama. He was gifted.
Yeah.
So he's not going to beat Obama in a speech competition. But when it comes to persuading people to do things without a lot of very strong evidence that they should, that to me is a gift. Prominent religious leaders have it. In history, we've had some political leaders who've had that gift. And I've observed our current president use that gift of his in ways where he has used power in ways that I could not have fathomed before his administration. And because he's used power so bluntly, so unapologetically, for instance, to pack our federal courts with the least diverse cadre of new additions that we've ever seen in my lifetime. Because he's used power over some of our most powerful institutions so dominantly, I think to myself that maybe power is the most important thing. And the reason why is because I can imagine a world where somebody who had used that power differently might have saved tens of thousands more Americans.
Wow.
And it to me is I do feel pain, just like I would feel pain if we were at war. I feel pain when I look on the news and I see thousands more gone who didn't have to be dead. If we were in a war, that would be a painful thing to see every day. We would all be in pain as a nation. And I'm a bit surprised that we're not as in pain as a nation after seeing those reports on a daily basis. In any event, now I'm not so sure if I'd pick power over money. But I'm still leaning toward money.
Still leaning toward well. Wow, man. Thank you for that. Definitely want to respect your time, Ed. I have a couple of more questions for you, and then we'll wrap it up here. So right now in your career, your partner at Fisher Phillips, I know you have several other investments and things of that nature on the side. What is one career goal that you're aiming to reach?
Well, I want to be known for being excellent at what I do. That's number one. Yeah. And all lawyers should have that as a number one goal. You should be known for being excellent at what you do, and you need to work at it to get there. Yeah. Number two, I would like the respect of my colleagues, because we're doing this together. The judges and other lawyers who help people resolve their disputes, we all are working together. And I would like to have their respect because they, for the most part, have mine. Yeah. So that's number two. But third, if you're a partner in a law firm, here's where the rubber meets the road. You have to build a business. You have to build what lawyers will call a book of business. You have to build a practice. And that is something that I am looking forward to doing in a big firm, building a very successful practice. And what that means is that you have done a good job for enough clients that more clients are coming to you for what you do. And you build out a business within a business so that you can actually service more clients, giving them the excellent work, excellent service that you're capable of. So I would like to, over time, build that type of very successful business within a business by building a great practice within the firm.
So going back in time, would you still have chosen the JD over the prestigious MBA?
I had an opportunity to get a prestigious MBA, and at that time, yes. And at that time, I chose to go to law school. But the reasons back then would not be the reasons why I would do it now. If I were mid-20s now, knowing what I know now, I'm almost certain I would go get an MBA at either Harvard or Wharton. That would be my goal. And I would not let you or anybody else stop me. And what does that mean? That means that I would get all the A's. That GMAT score would be well over 700, and I would be kicking butt. I would make it clear to those institutions that I have been fighting for a seat at your MBA program for 15 years. And if you don't give it to me, I'm coming back next year. But I mean, I would make sure that I would get a degree at an elite institution like that. The reason why is because I think that the MBA now, particularly at elite institutions, gives you opportunities to do things with your professional career after you get the MBA that no other degree program I think gives you. And I'm talking about elite MBA programs that do more than give you the education. They connect you with certain power networks. They open doors for you because of their prestige. And that is their true value, not the education. You can get that in many places. The true value is the relationships and the prestige. And when you are armed with all those things, education, relationships, and prestige, you can have some fun.
Yeah.
And I'd probably, if I could go back, I'd probably do it that way.
All right. Well, as someone in my mid-20s, I will definitely take heed. Thank you for that. So our last two signature questions that we ask all of our guests here on Prolific Figures. Number one, give us one book recommendation.
One book. Okay.
As he turns around to his thousands of books.
You see it?
Yes, sir.
You see that one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Tyler, I think I've given away over 100 copies of that book.
Wow.
That to me, if I could only pick one book that I wish I had read when I was in my 20s, other than James Baldwin's everything that he's ever written. Well, actually one business book.
Okay.
There are a whole bunch of books that should be read before that one, but one business book I pick up, Stanford professor Jeffrey Pfeiffer's Power. The subtitle is Why Some People Have It and Others Don't. It teaches the reader about the corporate political games that you must play if you desire to be successful within a corporate institution, or for that matter, a government institution. We will, you will, all of us will play games within those institutions. Some people simplify it and just call it all politics, but it is more than just politics. You need to have strategy. You need to understand where the power centers are. You need to understand how to get their attention. You need to understand how to become a part of the power center. And those types of contests happen all around us. People who read that book, they'll understand what's happening and they'll be more competitive.
So that book is actually on my Christmas wish list. So hopefully somebody in my realm of influence blesses me with that book.
I'm sending you one when we get off this call. I didn't know you didn't read it yet. I will mail one to you.
There we go. I appreciate that. Okay. So last but not least, bear in mind here that you have the eyes and the ears of all Black USAFA cadets right now, alumni, parents whose kids wants to come to the academy, everyone in that group. What is a final thought that you want to leave with everyone?
Choose wisely. Choose wisely how you're going to use your hours. Choose wisely which friendships you're going to invest most of your time in. Choose wisely how hard you're going to fight for A's. Choose wisely how much time you spend doing things that are not going to give you better opportunities, such as playing video games and watching internet TV. Choose wisely, or try as best you can, and rely on wiser people to help you make the toughest choices. That would be my parting words if you ask it that way. I oftentimes, when I'm asked something like that, I like to end with a poem, my favorite poem, but something made me respond to your question a little differently when you asked it that way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Ed. This has been a phenomenal interview. I know our audience is going to love it. Thank you so much for your time. And we will connect offline, and thank everyone for tuning into another episode of Prolific Figures, where we engage in fruitful discussion with influential African-American USAFA alumni. See ya.
Thank you, Ty.